Hello and welcome to my talk today on digitization of legacy datasets from the Lewis Shale and how it's leading to insights into reservoir property prediction and submarine fan evolution using Python and machine learning. I could not have done this talk today without former undergraduate researcher Jared Tadla and also my advisor at Mines, Dr. Zane Jobe. Just to clue you into where we're going to be looking at today, we're looking at southwestern Wyoming in the Greater Green River Basin, and most of the wells are from the Washakie Basin. And again, this is the last breath of the Western Interior Seaway. So the depositional model for the Lewis Shale, and it's really the Dad Sandstone within the Lewis Shale that we're looking at, is normal, true, deep water turbidites. And so it's a lot different than normal interior seaway type rocks and stratigraphy. The Fox Hills and the Dad Sandstone are time equivalent, and this is all above the almond formation. And again, this is a USGS cross-section going from north to south. And this lighter tan color is the Fox Hills, and this more orange beds is the Dad Sandstone. And so this is true cliniform, so you can trace building out in the basin heading from north towards the south during this time. So why are we looking at the Washakie Basin and Dad Sandstone? It's gas, it's not really the hottest play, but it does have a lot of really beautiful core that looks really similar to Deepwater core in the Gulf of Mexico, and there's a lot of it at the USGS Federal Center. And so this is a core description done by Ku, and it's beautiful. It has hybrid event beds. It has normal high density turbidites. It has normal looking turbidites. And so as far as deep water stratigraphy goes, it's a really interesting data set to really dive into. And compared to Gulf of Mexico data sets, it's all readily available at the USGS Core Center here in Denver. So the specific data set, 10 of the cores are at the USGS Fed Center. 2 of them are at the core storage at Mines. It's a rough north to south cross section in the basin, and they're all in Wyoming. And so it's over 1,200 feet of core. The majority of that feet is from number 10, the Colorado School of Mines Strat test number 61, with 2,000 plus XRF measurements. These are handheld helium purged XRF measurements that Jared and I did, and then 500 pore perm measurements. In the early 90s, there was a Lewis consortium at Mines, and they ended up drilling a research core that was behind the outcrop core, which had every well log you would ever want. And so just to go into the data I'm going to be presenting on is we digitized and dealt with all of this data. And so it took a lot of time of Jared and I's time to do the core description, to do in the upper right is the XRF, which we did every half foot, and just general organization and digitization of all this available public data, but usually it's scanned core reports and other data types. It's hard to pull stuff from. And this is easy for any machine learning work. collecting the data, cleaning the data, organizing the data is easily 80% of the work. But after we get it organized and cleaned up and ready to go, we can use these open source Python tools to do machine learning and general analysis on it. Now, one advantage of using these open source tools is the cost. It's completely free. You don't need a computer science degree to use them or specialized hardware. I do a lot of this work on Google Colab, which is free. And the models I'm going to be presenting today in the predictions, you can do from minutes to hours. So it's the type of thing where if you press go before you head off to lunch, by the time you get back, you would have some great results. So the first thing that we try to do, since we had a full well log suite, full grain size every 1/10 of a foot, is to let's see how well we can predict grain size. And the grain size was digitized in phi. Now, one thing about this data set is that there's not a ton of variation in the grain size, but it's still, sand to mud transition. So if you look in the upper right, the prediction error of grain size looks pretty good. So you want most of that error to be plus or minus 0, which it is. And then the lower right is the feature importance. And as not a surprise, the most important feature is the smooth gamma ray. Now with that, if you remove the, both the smooth gamma ray, normal gamma ray from the pool of available curves, the most important well log is deep resistivity, but the accuracy really didn't go down much. So yeah, so this deserves more research into why and how many well logs we can remove before accuracy really starts to nosedive. The other thing that we have done is to predict poor perm. This is a very typical workflow for petrophysicists. And so our data set was, all these core measurements from probably 30 years of labs from the 70s to the late 90s-ish. And with that, we have the truth of the core measurements. We hold some of them back, typically 20% of them back. And then we do training and testing on the measurements that we have, then see how close we can get. And so it's this kind of a tough data set to work with. It's the smallest of all data sets. And like I said, there's quite a bit of variation between labs and formations. In the early days of this play, it was a conventional gas play, and as time goes on, it's turned to more of a hybrid, conventional, unconventional type play, and the lab measurements have gotten substantially better. With that, we can do a pretty good job. So this is a KDE, and then the blue is the predictions, and then the orange is the truth. And so it's a little bit spikier, so we're not quite predicting the ends of it. And then also it's a little bit under predicting porosity. But again, it's better to underpredict than overpredict, but it's something to be aware of. So there's going to be some more future research on this to see if I can get these peaks to line up better, maybe some more processing or normalization on the front end before doing a big machine learning analysis. We also did some clustering with the data, just to see of the geochemistry data to see if there's any geospatial trends that we should see in the data. What's really nice about this, that it's fast and an unbiased way to look at the data. And looking at this, we see that F028, E934, and E997, they're all kind of clustered together. They're all on the middle eastern edge of the basin. And these groupings stay consistent, whether you have 2 or 3 clusters. Looking at the silhouette score, I probably wouldn't want to do more than 4 clusters. And so it's good to look at, but I didn't see any true north to south trends or anything that's any more spatial than these than this group of F028, E934, and E997. With that, along with the clustering exercise that we did, I've also developed a neural network to try and predict XRF geochemistry in places that we don't have it. And so there's XRF measurement every half foot. And so if you think about if you want to infill to every 1/10 of a foot, or if you want to do this analysis on cores that I didn't do XRF measurements on, you would use this tool. Why you would want to use a neural network is here on the right-hand side is a diagram, and a lot of the, if you think about the XRF measurements, they all sort of depend on each other. And so if you have high silica, for instance, you probably have low carbonate and vice versa. And so the prediction of one element aids with the prediction in another. So petrophysicists have been using neural nets for years for predicting XRF geochemistry from well logs. What's new about this is that it's going to be in open source data with open source tools. And so everyone can do this workflow on their own data or try to improve the predictions that I come up with. And then general applicability of these workflows is that if you're predicting grain size, predicting porosity, and then predicting geochemistry, you could improve basin-wide mapping. You can use it as a screening tool for reservoir presence, or whether that's the conventional sand reservoir or the unconventional shale reservoir. But I really see this as a way to develop best practices for subsurface machine learning, especially with legacy data. So this is a true data set that a lot of companies would have. And it was relatively disorganized of a lot of different vintages. And so compared to synthetic data sets or a lot of contest data sets that are hyper clean, this is a pretty average data set. And so I'm going to really be researching best filtering and pre-processing and modeling techniques needed for standard type data. Like I mentioned earlier, future work, I'm really going to dive into the core to log offset, since everything is being predicted from well log data. Is that the better quality and better match that we have between those, the well log and the core, the better off that will be. And again, just have a better workflow for test train splits and other typical machine learning needs. The other thing I'm going to do is productionize the code and the testing, and so it'll be more robust for other users to use this work and to apply it on their own data sets. And maybe it's not an oil and gas data set, maybe it's an IODP data set, maybe it's a different USGS data set looking at mining or geothermal or something completely different. And with that, thank you so much for watching this recording. I'm bummed I couldn't be there today. And if you have any questions, please shoot me an email at thomasmartin@mines.edu. I couldn't have done this without a lot of my friends and colleagues at Mines. And thanks again. Bye.